Millionaire tech CEO sleeps with Waitress. Discovers she's pregnant with triplets and marries her. Maya Rodriguez's feet screamed inside her worn sneakers as she balanced 4 plates on her left arm, coffee pot in her right hand. The clock above Rosie's diner read 11:47 p.m., but her shift wouldn't end until sunrise. Her coral dress, the only decent outfit she owned, clung to her tired frame as she forced another smile for table 6. Have you ever wondered what happens when love collides with betrayal at the highest stakes? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Tech billionaire Alexander Sterling stared at the ultrasound showing 3 heartbeats, knowing the woman beside him held the power to destroy his $2.8 billion empire. Maya Rodriguez clutched the pregnancy results, her coral dress trembling as she faced the man whose company had destroyed her family. What Alexander didn't know was that their passionate night together wasn't chance. It was calculated revenge planned by Maya's imprisoned father. Have you ever wondered what happens when love collides with betrayal at the highest stakes? This story will show you the devastating price of mixing business with vengeance. Stay with me as we witness a battle where billions hang in the balance and 3 innocent lives hold the key to either salvation or total destruction. Hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss how this explosive revenge plot unfolds. Let me take you back to the night that changed everything. Maya Rodriguez's feet screamed inside her worn sneakers as she balanced 4 plates on her left arm, coffee pot in her right hand. The clock above Rosie's diner read 11:47 p.m., but her shift wouldn't end until sunrise. Her coral dress, the only decent outfit she owned, clung to her tired frame as she forced another smile for table 6. "More coffee, gentlemen?" she asked, her voice maintaining warmth despite exhaustion gnawing at her bones. The construction workers nodded appreciatively. Maya's natural beauty turned heads even at midnight. Expressive dark eyes that held secrets, radiant smile that could melt hearts, infectious laugh that made lonely souls feel less alone. But tonight, laughter felt impossible. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Mercy General Hospital about her grandmother's overdue medical bills. $47,000 and climbing. Maya's chest tightened as she calculated her pathetic savings. $312. Between double shifts at the diner, stocking shelves at Murphy's Grocery, and cleaning offices downtown, Maya barely slept 4 hours nightly. Her pre-med courses suffered, but dreams of becoming a doctor felt increasingly distant when survival demanded everything. The bell above the diner's entrance chimed. Maya glanced up, expecting another late-night regular. Instead, she froze. Walking through the door was Alexander Sterling, Silicon Valley's golden boy whose face graced every business magazine. His piercing blue eyes looked tired, his usually perfect ash gray suit wrinkled and rain-soaked. Maya's hand trembled, nearly dropping the coffee pot. She knew exactly who he was. How could she forget the man who destroyed her family? 5 years ago, Alexander Sterling had her father arrested for corporate espionage. Ricardo Rodriguez, once Alexander's mentor and business partner, now rotted in federal prison while Sterling's AI company soared to unprecedented heights. The scandal had left the Rodriguez family financially devastated, forcing Maya's mother to work 3 jobs before her death 2 years later. The letter from her father, received just yesterday, burned in Maya's memory. "The time has come, Mija. Make him pay for what he took from us." Alexander slumped into a corner booth, running exhausted hands through his dark hair. He looked vulnerable, human, nothing like the ruthless corporate predator Maya had imagined. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't coincidence. Her father's contacts had tracked Alexander's movements, knowing his Tesla's maintenance schedule, predicting exactly when and where he'd be stranded. Maya approached his table, order pad trembling in her hands. Alexander Sterling sat 3 feet away, completely unaware that Ricardo Rodriguez's daughter was about to serve him coffee. The revenge her father had meticulously planned for 5 years was finally beginning. Alexander Sterling commanded the Sterling Technologies boardroom like a general surveying his battlefield. 24 years old and worth $2.8 billion. He possessed the kind of confidence that made seasoned investors defer to his judgment. His piercing blue eyes swept across the mahogany table where 12 board members awaited his decision on the company's historic IPO. "Gentlemen, we're revolutionizing artificial intelligence," Alexander declared, his voice cutting through the tension. "Our algorithms can predict human behavior with 97% accuracy. Netflix, Amazon, Facebook, they're all desperate for our technology." Board member Harrison Webb shifted uncomfortably. "Alexander, the IPO timing concerns us. Your recent divorce generated negative publicity. Investors worry about your stability." Alexander's jaw tightened. The divorce from socialite Victoria had been brutal, played out across tabloid headlines for months. She claimed he valued his company more than their marriage. She wasn't wrong. 80-hour work weeks had left no room for romance, only for building his empire. "My personal life doesn't affect our profit margins," Alexander replied coldly. "But it affects investor confidence," Webb pressed. "Perhaps postponing. We launch next month." Alexander's tone brooked no argument. "This company represents my life's work. I started coding in my Harvard dorm room while you were worried about quarterly reports. Trust me, Sterling Technologies will dominate the market." The meeting ended with reluctant agreement, but Alexander sensed their lingering doubts. Success demanded perfection, not just in business, but in image. Any scandal could derail the IPO and cost billions. Outside, rain pounded San Francisco's streets with unusual intensity. Alexander's Tesla, his one indulgence, sat dead in the Sterling Technologies parking garage. The battery had failed despite regular maintenance, leaving him stranded at midnight with no Uber available in the storm. Frustrated and exhausted, Alexander grabbed his briefcase and stepped into the downpour. His perfectly tailored suit absorbed water like a sponge, his Italian leather shoes squelching through puddles. The untouchable tech mogul suddenly felt very human. 3 blocks through the storm, Alexander spotted neon light bleeding through the darkness. Rosie's Diner. Open 24 hours. The establishment looked shabby, nothing like the 5-star restaurants where he typically dined. But pride seemed less important than dry clothes and hot coffee. Alexander pushed through the glass door, water dripping from his expensive suit onto worn linoleum floors. A few late-night customers glanced up curiously. Construction workers, taxi drivers, insomniacs seeking refuge. None recognized Silicon Valley's golden boy in his bedraggled state. The warm air embraced him, carrying scents of bacon grease and fresh pie. For the first time in months, Alexander Sterling was just another customer seeking shelter from a storm. Maya's breath caught as Alexander Sterling slumped into the corner booth, looking more defeated than dangerous. Rain had transformed Silicon Valley's golden boy into something unexpectedly human. His ash-gray suit clinging damply to his frame, dark hair tousled, those infamous piercing blue eyes reflecting exhaustion rather than corporate ruthlessness. She approached with coffee pot in hand, her father's instructions echoing, "Be friendly, be memorable, but don't reveal yourself yet." "Rough night?" Maya asked, filling his cup without being asked. Alexander looked up, and their eyes met for the first time. Something electric passed between them, an instant connection Maya hadn't anticipated. His gaze lingered on her face, taking in her natural beauty with an intensity that made her cheeks flush. "Tesla died on me," he said, his voice softer than she'd expected. "Apparently even billion-dollar companies can't fix everything." Maya's heart skipped. He'd just revealed his identity without knowing hers. "Billion-dollar companies tend to forget about the little things that matter," she replied carefully. "You'd be surprised how much I remember about little things." Alexander sipped his coffee, wincing slightly. "This is actually decent coffee. Rosie makes it fresh every 4 hours," Maya said, surprised to find herself genuinely smiling. "Most places let it sit all night, but she says coffee should never taste like regret." Alexander laughed, a real laugh that transformed his entire face. "Coffee that tastes like regret. That's poetic." Maya found herself sitting across from him, abandoning her other tables. What brings a guy in an expensive suit to a place like this at midnight? Besides a dead car, Alexander studied her face. Sometimes you need to remember what real feels like. I spend my days in boardrooms full of people who agree with everything I say. It's exhausting being right all the time. Maybe you're not always right, Maya teased, forgetting momentarily why she was there. Careful, Alexander grinned. That kind of honesty could be dangerous. They talked until dawn, sharing stories about dreams and disappointments. Alexander spoke about the loneliness of success, how victory felt hollow without someone to share it with. Maya talked about her grandmother, her medical school aspirations, the beauty of helping others heal. As sunrise painted the diner windows gold, Alexander hesitated. This might sound crazy, but would you like to see my place? I make terrible coffee, but the view's incredible. Maya's pulse quickened. This was the moment her father had planned. Get close, gain his trust, position herself for maximum damage. But looking into Alexander's eyes, she saw vulnerability, not the monster she'd expected. Yes, she whispered, sealing both their fates. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of Alexander's penthouse, illuminating a view that stretched across San Francisco Bay. Maya stood wrapped in his silk robe, watching morning joggers move like ants 40 stories below. The night had been incredible, passionate, tender, electric. But reality was crashing back with devastating force. Alexander emerged from the shower, toweling his dark hair, corporate armor already replacing the vulnerable man she'd glimpsed at the diner. His blue eyes held distance now, calculating and cold. Last night was... He paused, selecting words like a business negotiation. Unexpected, Maya's stomach dropped. She recognized dismissal when she heard it. But I have responsibilities. My company's going public next month. Any personal complications could cost billions. Alexander's voice carried professional detachment that made Maya feel like a transaction being closed. Personal complications, Maya repeated, the phrase stinging. Is that what I am? Alexander's expression softened briefly. Maya, you're beautiful, intelligent, incredible. But my world operates by different rules. One tabloid photo could destroy everything I've built. Maya nodded, understanding perfectly. She was good enough for one night, but not worthy of his precious reputation. The dismissal felt familiar. Another powerful man treating her like she was disposable. I should go, she said quietly, gathering her coral dress from the floor. My driver will take you wherever you need to go, Alexander offered, already checking his phone for messages. The ride to her apartment passed in humiliated silence. Maya stared out the window, her father's voice echoing. He destroyed our family without a second thought. Now you know how ruthless he really is. But even as anger built inside her chest, Maya couldn't shake the memory of Alexander's laughter, the way he'd listened to her dreams with genuine interest, how gentle his hands had been in the darkness. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Coffee was better than I remembered. Thank you for reminding me what real feels like. Ugh. Maya stared at the message, confusion warring with hurt. Which Alexander was real? The tender man who'd held her close, or the cold executive who dismissed her like a business problem? 3 blocks from her apartment, Maya spotted them. Photographers with telephoto lenses snapping pictures of Alexander's car. Her face burning with embarrassment, she realized the damage was already done. By afternoon, the photos were everywhere. Tech mogul's mystery woman and Sterling's secret romance blazed across gossip sites and business blogs. Maya's phone rang. Her father's contact, calling from prison. Phase 1 complete. Mija, Ricardo Rodriguez's voice carried satisfaction. Now the real work begins. 6 weeks later, Maya stared at 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on her bathroom counter like tiny plastic judges. Her hands shook as she counted the days, calculated the timing, faced the impossible truth. She was carrying Alexander Sterling's child, or children. The ultrasound appointment that afternoon had revealed triplets. 2 girls and a boy, their tiny hearts beating like rapid drums on the monitor. Maya had sat frozen in the examination room, watching three lives that would forever connect her to a man who'd already forgotten she existed. Her phone buzzed constantly with her father's calls, but Maya couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she explain that the revenge plan had created three innocent victims? The Sterling Technologies building loomed before her like a glass and steel mountain. Maya wore her coral dress, the same one from that first night, hoping it might remind Alexander of their connection. Security guards scrutinized her appearance before allowing access to the executive floor. Alexander's office reflected his personality: minimalist, powerful, intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased his empire, while awards and magazine covers celebrated his achievements. He sat behind a mahogany desk larger than Maya's entire bedroom, typing furiously on his laptop. "Maya." Alexander looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "What are you doing here? We need to talk." Maya's voice barely carried across the vast room. Alexander glanced at his watch, a gesture that immediately transported Maya back to his dismissive morning-after behavior. "I have a board meeting in 20 minutes. This won't take long." Maya approached his desk, clutching the ultrasound images behind her back. "Look, about that night," Alexander began. "I'm pregnant," Maya interrupted, the words exploding between them like grenades. Alexander's fingers froze above his keyboard. His face went completely blank, processing information like one of his AI algorithms. "What did you say?" Maya placed the ultrasound images on his desk. "Triplets. 2 girls, 1 boy. Due in 7 months." Alexander stared at the grainy black and white images, showing 3 tiny forms floating in protective darkness. His piercing blue eyes moved between the pictures and Maya's face, seeking confirmation of what seemed impossible. "Are you certain they're mine?" The question came out clinical, businesslike. Maya's cheeks flushed with indignation. "There hasn't been anyone else." Alexander stood abruptly, pacing to his windows. The IPO launch was 3 weeks away. Investors were already nervous about his leadership stability. A pregnant mistress, especially one from such different social circumstances, could derail everything. "What do you want?" he asked without turning around. "I want to give you the chance to know your children," Maya said softly. Alexander's reflection in the window showed a man calculating costs versus benefits. When he finally faced her, his expression was resolved. "Marry me," he said simply. Maya blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "Marriage provides legitimacy, protects the IPO, gives the children my name and financial security." Alexander spoke like he was proposing a merger, not a life together. Maya stared at him, her father's revenge plan suddenly seeming very close to success. "What do you think Maya should do?" Drop a comment below and let me know if she should accept Alexander's cold proposal. Maya's acceptance of Alexander's proposal triggered a media earthquake that shook Silicon Valley to its core. Within hours, every major news outlet carried the story. Tech billionaire marries pregnant waitress, and Cinderella CEO's wife. Rags to riches romance. The narrative Alexander's PR team crafted was pure fiction. A beautiful love story about a powerful man swept off his feet by an innocent young woman. Magazine editors devoured the fairy tale angle, commissioning photographers to capture Maya's transformation from diner waitress to billionaire's bride. But Maya felt like a fraud dressed in designer gowns that cost more than her family's annual income. Each interview required careful lies about their whirlwind romance, while cameras documented her every move. Paparazzi followed her to medical appointments, grocery stores, even her grandmother's hospital bedside. "The public loves you," Alexander's publicist, Jennifer Chun, announced during their wedding planning session. "Your story represents the American dream. Hard work rewarded with true love." Maya nodded, swallowing bile. True love. If only they knew their fairy tale princess was actually a weapon aimed at their golden prince's heart. Alexander maintained professional distance throughout their arrangement. He purchased a mansion in Pacific Heights for appearances, but made clear they would occupy separate wings. The house felt like a museum, beautiful, cold, designed for admiring rather than living. Their relationship existed solely for public consumption. At charity galas and business dinners, Alexander played the devoted husband, his hand resting protectively over Maya's growing belly. But alone, they were strangers navigating an elaborate performance. Maya's father called from prison nightly, his voice dripping satisfaction. "Perfect, Mija. You're positioned exactly where we need you." His computer passwords, business documents, merger plans, everything is within reach. "The baby's papa," Maya whispered during one late-night conversation. "They're innocent in this. They're Rodriguez blood," Ricardo replied firmly. "They deserve better than sterling money built on our family's destruction." Meanwhile, investigative journalist Patricia Vance had begun digging into Maya's background. Her phone calls to Rosie's diner, inquiries about Maya's family history, questions about her father's whereabouts. Each probe brought dangerous exposure closer. Maya found herself genuinely worried about Alexander's reaction when the truth emerged. During quiet moments, she watched him review architectural plans for the nursery, his face softening as he imagined holding his children. The transformation was subtle but real. Success-driven billionaire slowly becoming an expectant father. The media pressure intensified daily. Fashion magazines wanted exclusive pregnancy photo shoots. Talk shows requested interviews about their inspiring romance. Wedding planners competed to create Silicon Valley's most lavish ceremony. But late at night, alone in her wing of the mansion, Maya felt the babies moving inside her and wondered if she was protecting them from her father's vengeance or delivering them directly into it. The wedding was scheduled for next month. After that, there would be no turning back from either path, revenge or redemption. The Sterling Rodriguez wedding became Silicon Valley's social event of the decade. Alexander spared no expense, transforming their arrangement into a spectacle worthy of his reputation. The Napa Valley vineyard he selected could accommodate 800 guests, while celebrity wedding planner Marcella Reeves coordinated every detail with military precision. Maya stood motionless as designers fitted her custom gown, a creation worth more than most people's homes. Silk imported from Italy, pearls hand-sewn by artisans, a train that required 3 assistants to manage. She looked like a princess, but felt like a prisoner awaiting execution. "You're glowing," Marcella gushed, adjusting the gown's empire waist to accommodate Maya's expanding belly. "Pregnancy suits you beautifully." Maya forced a smile while her father's latest letter burned in her memory. His final instructions were clear. After the ceremony, she would have unlimited access to Alexander's home office, his personal computer, his most sensitive business files. The information she gathered would expose Sterling Technologies' illegal practices and destroy the company from within. Alexander approached wedding preparations like a corporate merger. Guest lists were strategic networking opportunities. Menu selections reflected his sophisticated image. Even their first dance was choreographed by professionals to ensure perfection. But Maya noticed small moments when his mask slipped. While reviewing nursery designs, Alexander's eyes held genuine warmth. During her doctor appointments, his questions about the baby's health carried real concern. The ruthless businessman was slowly becoming a father, whether he admitted it or not. "Have you thought about names?" Alexander asked one evening, reviewing contractor proposals for the nursery renovation. Maya looked up from her prenatal vitamins, surprised by the personal question. "I like traditional names. Strong ones. My grandfather was named James," Alexander said quietly. "He taught me everything about building something lasting." The vulnerability in his voice made Maya's chest tighten. This was the man she glimpsed that night at the diner. Human, complex, capable of love. Her father would dismiss such moments as calculated manipulation, but Maya saw genuine emotion flickering behind Alexander's corporate facade. Her grandmother's condition worsened daily. The experimental treatments Alexander's money provided offered hope, but Maria Rodriguez remained unconscious, unaware her granddaughter was marrying her family's enemy. Patricia Vance's investigation grew more aggressive. The journalist had discovered Maya's father's identity and was connecting dots that led straight to federal prison. Phone calls from unknown numbers increased. Strange cars appeared outside Maya's medical appointments. "We need additional security," Alexander announced after his head of security briefed him on potential threats. "Someone's been asking questions about your background." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Discovery felt inevitable now. The only question was timing. 3 weeks until the wedding. 3 weeks before Maya would become Mrs. Alexander Sterling and gain complete access to destroy the man she was beginning to genuinely care about. The trap was nearly complete. 800 guests filled the Napa Valley vineyard as Maya Rodriguez prepared to become Mrs. Alexander Sterling. The ceremony cost more than most companies' annual budgets. Orchids flown from Ecuador, champagne worth $40,000 per bottle, a string quartet that normally performed at Carnegie Hall. Maya stared at her reflection in the bridal suite's antique mirror. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger. Designer gown worth $250,000, diamonds borrowed from Tiffany's private collection, makeup applied by artists who worked with Hollywood royalty. But beneath the glamour, she remained Ricardo Rodriguez's daughter, carrying his mission in her heart like a virus. "You look incredible," Alexander said from the doorway, his voice carrying unusual tenderness. Maya turned, breath catching at the sight of him. His custom tuxedo fit perfectly, but what stopped her heart was the expression in his piercing blue eyes. Genuine awe, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible above her thundering pulse. Alexander approached slowly, studying her face with an intensity that made her cheeks flush. "Maya, I know this arrangement isn't traditional, but I want you to know, time to go." Marcella Reeves burst through the door, clipboard in hand. "The processional starts in 5 minutes." The moment shattered, leaving Maya wondering what Alexander had been about to say. The ceremony began with classical perfection. Maya walked down the petal-strewn aisle while cameras captured every step for the exclusive magazine coverage Alexander had negotiated. Silicon Valley's elite filled ornate chairs, tech moguls, venture capitalists, politicians who owed Alexander favors. But as Maya approached the altar where Alexander waited, the elaborate production faded into background noise. His eyes never left her face, holding an expression she'd never seen before, protective, possessive, tender. Father Martinez began the traditional ceremony, his voice carrying across the vineyard. Maya barely heard the words, too focused on Alexander's hands holding hers, the warmth of his touch, the way he looked at her like she mattered. "Do you, Alexander James Sterling, take Maya Elena Rodriguez to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Alexander replied, his voice strong and clear. "Do you, Maya Elena Rodriguez, take Alexander James Sterling to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Maya hesitated, feeling the weight of 800 watching eyes, knowing her father would be listening to news coverage from his prison cell. This was her final chance to abandon the revenge plan, to choose a different path. But Alexander's thumbs stroked gently across her knuckles, a gesture so tender it nearly broke her resolve. "I do," she whispered. Alexander's smile transformed his entire face as Father Martinez pronounced them husband and wife. When he kissed her, the gesture felt real, not performed for cameras but genuine, electric, full of possibility. The reception blurred past in a whirlwind of champagne toasts, congratulations from strangers, and photographers documenting their every interaction. Maya played her part perfectly, the blushing bride overwhelmed by her fairy tale transformation. But as night fell and guests began departing, reality returned with crushing force. Tonight was their wedding night. Tonight, according to her father's plan, Maya would reveal her true identity and complete the mission that had brought them together. Tonight, she would destroy the man who'd just promised to love and protect her. The presidential suite at the Four Seasons overlooked San Francisco Bay, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the city lights like scattered diamonds. Alexander had spared no expense for their wedding night. Champagne chilling in silver buckets, rose petals scattered across silk sheets, candles casting romantic shadows throughout the room. Maya stood at the window, still wearing her wedding gown, watching boats move across the dark water. Her father's final letter felt like fire in her mind. Tonight, you tell him everything. Tonight, the Sterling Empire begins to crumble. Alexander emerged from the bathroom, having traded his tuxedo for a black silk robe. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his piercing blue eyes soft with something Maya had never seen before. Hope. Regrets? He asked, approaching slowly. Maya's throat tightened. Should I have them? I know this isn't the marriage either of us imagined, Alexander said, his voice unusually vulnerable. But watching you today, seeing how you handled everything with such grace. Maya, I think we can make this work. Really work. The sincerity in his voice nearly destroyed her resolve. This was Alexander Sterling without his corporate armor. A man capable of genuine emotion, someone who might actually be falling for his arranged wife. Alexander, there's something I need to tell you, Maya whispered. He moved closer, his hands finding her waist with gentle certainty. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. That's what marriage means, right? Maya's eyes filled with tears. The man standing before her wasn't the monster her father had described. He was complex, flawed, but fundamentally decent. A man who just pledged his life to her, who was looking forward to raising their children together. My name isn't just Maya Rodriguez, she began, her voice breaking. Alexander's hands stilled on her waist. What do you mean? My father is Ricardo Rodriguez, your former business partner, the one you had arrested 5 years ago. The color drained from Alexander's face as understanding crashed over him like a physical blow. His hands fell away from her body as if she'd suddenly caught fire. What did you say? He whispered. That night at the diner wasn't coincidence, Maya continued, forcing herself to meet his eyes. My father planned everything. He knew your car would break down, knew you'd come to Rosie's. I was supposed to seduce you, gain your trust, then destroy your company from the inside. Alexander staggered backward, his face cycling through shock, betrayal, and finally, rage. You're Ricardo Rodriguez's daughter. Yes, everything was a lie. The diner, our conversation, sleeping with me, all of it was planned. Not all of it, Maya said desperately. Alexander, what I felt that night was real. What I feel for you now is real. Alexander's laugh was bitter, cutting. Real? You're carrying my children as part of a revenge plot. I never expected to fall in love with you. Maya cried. Love. Alexander's voice turned cold, deadly. You don't know what that word means. You're exactly like your father, a liar, a manipulator, someone who destroys other people's lives for sport. Maya flinched as if he'd struck her. That's not true. Get out, Alexander said quietly. Alexander, please. Get out, he roared, his control finally snapping. I never want to see you again. You and your bastard children can go straight to hell. Maya sobbed, pressing her hands protectively over her belly. These are your children too. But Alexander had already turned away, reaching for his phone to call his lawyers. Maya's confession had destroyed everything. Their marriage, their future, any possibility of redemption. The revenge was complete. Maya collapsed in the hotel hallway, her wedding gown pooling around her like spilled milk as crushing chest pains doubled her over. Alexander's words echoed in her mind, bastard children, while her body betrayed her under the weight of stress and heartbreak. Hotel security found her unconscious 20 minutes later, rushed her to UCSF Medical Center, where emergency room doctors worked frantically to stabilize both mother and babies. At 28 weeks pregnant, Maya's triplets were dangerously premature, their survival hanging by threads as thin as spider silk. Dr. Sarah Kim emerged from the examination room with grim news for Alexander, who'd arrived still wearing his wedding tuxedo, his face carved from stone. Your wife is experiencing severe preeclampsia, DR. Kim explained. Her blood pressure is critically high, and we're seeing signs of placental abruption. The babies are in distress. Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. What does that mean? It means we might need to deliver tonight to save their lives. But at 28 weeks, they'll face significant challenges, breathing problems, feeding difficulties, potential developmental delays. Alexander stared through the window at Maya's unconscious form, hooked to monitors that beeped urgent warnings. IVs snaked in her arms while oxygen tubes helped her breathe. She looked fragile, young, nothing like the calculating manipulator he'd accused her of being. His phone buzzed constantly, waiting guests asking about Maya's sudden departure, business partners concerned about the scandal, his lawyer demanding immediate annulment papers. But Alexander couldn't focus on anything except the 3 lives hanging in the balance inside Maya's body. Dr. Kim continued her medical assessment. The stress appears to have triggered these complications. Has your wife been under unusual pressure recently? Alexander's jaw tightened, remembering his cruel words, the devastating revelation, how he'd thrown her out without considering her condition. Yes, he admitted quietly. We're monitoring the baby's heartbeats continuously, Dr. Kim said. If their distress worsens, we'll have no choice but to perform an emergency cesarean. Alexander nodded, unable to speak. Despite his rage at Maya's deception, these were his children fighting for survival. The thought of losing them created a hollow ache in his chest he hadn't expected. Maya stirred, her dark eyes fluttering open to find Alexander sitting beside her bed. Confusion clouded her features before memory returned with devastating clarity. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Like I'm dying," Maya whispered truthfully. "The babies are stable for now," Alexander said. "Dr. Kim says we need to keep your stress levels down." Maya studied his face, searching for forgiveness she knew she didn't deserve. "Alexander, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but—" "Don't," Alexander interrupted. "We can't discuss this now. The only thing that matters is keeping our children alive. Our children." The words carried weight Maya hadn't dared hope for. A nurse entered with alarming news. "Dr. Kim needs you both immediately. The baby's heart rates are dropping." Alexander's face went white as medical staff surrounded Maya's bed, preparing for emergency surgery. In the chaos of rushing toward the operating room, Maya reached for his hand. "If something happens to me," she gasped, "promise you'll take care of them." Alexander squeezed her fingers, his anger temporarily forgotten in the face of potential loss. "Nothing's going to happen," he said fiercely. "We're all going to survive this." Like this video if you think Alexander can forgive Maya, or comment below if you believe their marriage is beyond saving. 3 days after Maya's hospitalization, Ricardo Rodriguez walked out of San Quentin State Prison a free man. The early release, supposedly for good behavior, had been orchestrated through connections Maya never knew existed. Her father's network of former associates, bitter enemies of Sterling Technologies, had been waiting 5 years for this moment. Alexander received the news while sitting beside Maya's hospital bed, watching monitors track their baby's fragile heartbeats. His security chief delivered the update with military precision. Ricardo Rodriguez was released yesterday. Our intelligence suggests he's already in San Francisco. Maya's eyes flew open, terror replacing the medication-induced calm she'd maintained since the emergency. "Papa's out. You knew about this," Alexander accused, his voice turning cold again. "No, Maya whispered. I swear I didn't know." But Alexander's trust had already been shattered beyond repair. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hospital linoleum. More lies. Within hours, Sterling Technologies' stock began hemorrhaging value. Anonymous sources leaked confidential information to financial journalists. Details about upcoming mergers, proprietary algorithms, even personal emails between Alexander and board members. The IPO launch, scheduled for next week, looked increasingly impossible. Ricardo Rodriguez had spent 5 years in prison studying his former protege's empire, identifying every weakness, every vulnerability. Now he executed his revenge with surgical precision. Sterling Technologies has been manipulating AI data to inflate performance metrics, one leaked document claimed. Internal emails show executives knew about algorithmic bias but covered it up to protect profits. The Securities and Exchange Commission announced an immediate investigation. Major investors pulled funding commitments. Board members demanded emergency meetings to discuss Alexander's leadership. Meanwhile, Maya lay helpless in her hospital bed, watching news coverage destroy the man she'd grown to love. Her father had never intended for her to develop genuine feelings. She was supposed to be a weapon, not a woman torn between loyalty and love. Alexander returned to the hospital after 18 hours of crisis management, his ash-gray suit wrinkled, his piercing blue eyes bloodshot with exhaustion. He'd aged years in a single day. "The company's hemorrhaging money," he said without preamble. "Your father's leaked information that could put me in federal prison." Maya struggled to sit up despite doctors' orders to remain motionless. "Alexander, I can help. I know how Papa thinks, how he operates. Help." Alexander's laugh was bitter. "You've done enough helping. I can contact him," Maya pressed. "Convince him to stop." "Why would you do that?" Alexander studied her face with suspicious intensity. "This is what you wanted, what your family planned." Maya's hand moved protectively over her belly, where their children continued their precarious fight for survival. "Because these babies deserve better than growing up in the shadow of revenge. Because what we felt that night at the diner was real, even if everything else was lies." Alexander remained silent for long moments, watching Maya's monitors beep steadily. Finally, he spoke. "Your father called me an hour ago." Maya's breath caught. "What did he say?" "He wants to meet. Tonight. Says he has a proposition that could save both my company and your life." The trap was closing from both sides now. Ricardo Rodriguez held all the cards, while Maya and Alexander's children hung in the balance between vengeance and survival. The abandoned warehouse in Oakland's industrial district seemed an unlikely venue for billion-dollar negotiations, but Ricardo Rodriguez had chosen the location deliberately. This was where Sterling Technologies had first been incorporated, where Alexander and Ricardo had once dreamed of changing the world together. Alexander arrived alone, against his security team's protests. Maya had begged to accompany him from her hospital bed, but Dr. Kim refused to risk her fragile condition. Instead, she monitored the meeting through Alexander's phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. Ricardo Rodriguez looked older than his 52 years. Prison had carved deep lines around his eyes, silvered his hair, hardened his once generous smile into something sharp and calculating. But his intelligence remained razor keen, his presence commanding despite his circumstances. "Alexander," Ricardo said, his voice carrying mock warmth. "You look terrible. What do you want?" Alexander replied curtly. "Justice," Ricardo said simply. "You destroyed my family, stole my life's work, had me imprisoned on fabricated charges. My wife died working 3 jobs to survive while you became a billionaire using algorithms I helped create." Alexander's jaw tightened. "You were selling our technology to competitors." "The evidence was overwhelming. Evidence you manufactured," Ricardo countered. "But I didn't bring you here to relitigate the past. I brought you here to discuss the future. Specifically, my daughter's future and the future of my grandchildren." Through the phone connection, Maya listened with growing dread as her father outlined his final gambit. "Sterling Technologies will collapse within 48 hours, Ricardo continued. "The SEC investigation will find irregularities because I planted them in your systems years ago, insurance policies for exactly this moment. You'll face federal charges, prison time, complete financial ruin. Unless," Alexander prompted, "unless you transfer 60% ownership of Sterling Technologies to Maya Rodriguez Sterling." Ricardo smiled coldly. "My daughter becomes majority shareholder. I disappear quietly, and everyone lives happily ever after." Alexander's phone crackled as Maya's voice came through. "Papa, no. I won't take what isn't mine." "Mija," Ricardo's voice softened. "This company was built on our family's foundation. You're simply reclaiming what was stolen." "I don't want it," Maya said firmly. "I want you to stop this madness." Ricardo's expression hardened. "You're carrying his children. That doesn't make him worthy of forgiveness." Alexander stepped closer to Ricardo, his voice low and dangerous. "Those children are the only reason I'm negotiating instead of having you arrested." "Arrest me with what evidence?" Ricardo laughed. "Every document, every email, every financial record supporting your case against me has been systematically discredited. Meanwhile, my evidence against you is ironclad. Maya's voice cut through their standoff. There's another option. Both men turned toward Alexander's phone. What if we work together? Maya continued. Papa, you wanted justice, not just revenge. Alexander, you wanted to build something lasting. What if Sterling Technologies became something new, something that honors both your contributions? Ricardo's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting partnership? I am suggesting evolution, Maya replied. A company that prioritizes ethics over profits, that uses AI to solve real problems instead of manipulating consumers. You both want to change the world. Maybe it's time to actually do it. Alexander and Ricardo stared at each other across years of betrayal and bitterness, while Maya's words hung between them like a bridge neither man was sure he could cross. Maya's proposal created a moment of stunned silence in the warehouse, broken only by the distant hum of Oakland traffic. Alexander and Ricardo stood frozen in their decades-long conflict, both processing the impossibility of cooperation. Then Maya's voice came through the phone, weak but urgent. Alexander, something's wrong. The line went dead. Alexander sprinted from the warehouse while Ricardo followed, their negotiation forgotten in the face of medical emergency. The drive to UCSF Medical Center became a desperate race against time, both men united by fear for Maya and the baby she carried. They arrived to find chaos in the maternity ward. Dr. Kim and her team rushed Maya toward emergency surgery while monitors screamed warnings about dropping blood pressure and fetal distress. Severe placental abruption, Dr. Kim explained rapidly. The babies need to be delivered immediately or we'll lose them all. Alexander grabbed Maya's hand as they rushed toward the operating room. Her dark eyes found his, filled with terror and love in equal measure. If I don't make it, Maya gasped. Promise me you'll raise them to be better than this cycle of revenge. You're going to make it, Alexander said fiercely. All of you. Ricardo appeared at Maya's other side, his hardened expression cracking as he saw his daughter fighting for her life. Mia, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Papa, I love you, but this has to end. The operating room doors closed, leaving Alexander and Ricardo alone in the surgical waiting area. Hours stretched between them like an ocean of regret and missed opportunities. She looks like her mother, Ricardo said quietly, breaking their silence. Alexander nodded, remembering Maya's radiant smile that first night at the diner. She has her mother's strength too. Maria would be disappointed in me, Ricardo continued. I taught my daughter to hate instead of love, to seek revenge instead of justice. We both failed her, Alexander admitted. I should have investigated your case more thoroughly 5 years ago. I should have questioned the evidence instead of accepting it blindly. Ricardo looked up sharply. You believe me now? Maya believes you, Alexander said simply. That's enough. Dr. Kim emerged 6 hours later, her surgical scrubs stained with evidence of the battle she'd fought. Both men rose immediately, dreading the news she carried. Maya is stable, Dr. Kim announced, and both men sagged with relief. The surgery was successful, but she'll need weeks of recovery. The babies? Alexander asked, his voice barely audible. Dr. Kim smiled for the first time in hours. 3 healthy fighters, 2 girls and a boy, each weighing just over 3 pounds. They'll need time in the NICU, but their vitals are strong. Alexander closed his eyes, overwhelmed by gratitude and terror in equal measure. He was a father. 3 tiny lives depended on him now. Can we see them? Ricardo asked. Doctor? Kim nodded. Follow me. The NICU was a forest of machines and monitors, but nothing had ever looked more beautiful to Alexander than 3 tiny forms sleeping in warming beds. His daughters were identical, with Maya's dark hair and delicate features. His son was slightly larger, with Alexander's strong jaw already evident. Ricardo stood beside him, tears streaming down his weathered face. They're perfect. They deserve better than what we've given them so far, Alexander said quietly. Ricardo nodded, his voice thick with emotion. Maybe it's time we both grew up. Standing in that sterile room, surrounded by the miracle of new life, two bitter enemies began the slow process of becoming something neither had expected: family. Alexander Sterling called a press conference for the following morning. Despite his lawyer's frantic objections, the assembled journalists expected damage control, corporate spin, perhaps resignation. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented in Silicon Valley: complete vulnerability from one of tech's most powerful figures. Standing at the podium in Sterling Technologies' main conference room, Alexander looked exhausted but determined. His ash-gray suit was perfectly pressed, but his piercing blue eyes held a raw honesty that transformed his entire presence. "Yesterday, my wife gave birth to our triplets," Alexander began, his voice carrying none of its usual corporate authority. "They're fighting for their lives in the NICU, and watching them struggle has clarified what truly matters." The room buzzed with surprise. This wasn't the statement anyone had expected. "5 years ago, I made decisions that destroyed a family," Alexander continued. "I believed evidence without questioning its source, prioritized profits over people, and chose corporate success over human decency. Those choices led to tragedy, revenge, and almost cost me everything I now realize I actually value." Cameras flashed as journalists scribbled notes, sensing this was bigger than a typical CEO apology. "Ricardo Rodriguez was my mentor, my friend, and ultimately the victim of my ambition," Alexander said, his voice growing stronger. "I had him imprisoned based on evidence I now believe was fabricated by competitors who wanted to destroy our partnership. While I built a billion-dollar empire, his family suffered poverty, illness, and death." The conference room erupted in shocked murmurs. Alexander raised his hand for silence. His daughter, Maya Rodriguez Sterling, entered my life seeking justice for her family's suffering. What began as revenge became something neither of us expected: genuine love, shared purpose, and now 3 children who represent hope instead of hatred. Alexander's phone buzzed with frantic texts from board members, but he ignored them completely. "Effective immediately, I'm restructuring Sterling Technologies," he announced. "Ricardo Rodriguez will join as Chief Ethics Officer and equal partner. 60% of company profits will fund an educational foundation in memory of Maria Rodriguez, Maya's mother, who died working multiple jobs to survive my mistakes." The gathered journalists sat in stunned silence as Alexander dismantled everything they thought they knew about Silicon Valley power dynamics. Sterling Technologies will also establish new protocols for AI development, prioritizing human welfare over profit margins, ensuring algorithmic fairness, and maintaining complete transparency in our research methods, Alexander continued. Patricia Vance, the investigative journalist who'd been tracking Maya's background, raised her hand. "Mr. Sterling, critics will say this is publicity damage control. How do we know these commitments are genuine?" Alexander smiled, and for the first time in years, the expression reached his eyes. "Because I'm stepping down as CEO. Ricardo Rodriguez and Maya Sterling will lead this company together, building something better than either of us could create alone." The room exploded in chaos as journalists shouted questions, but Alexander was already walking away from the podium. He had more important places to be, specifically the NICU, where 3 tiny lives were teaching him what real success looked like. His phone rang constantly as he drove back to the hospital. Board members threatened resignation. Investors demanded emergency meetings. Analysts predicted corporate catastrophe. Alexander turned off his phone and walked into the NICU, where Maya sat holding their son for the first time. "How did it go?" she asked softly. "Perfect," Alexander replied, meaning it completely. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez Sterling stood in the renovated Sterling Technologies headquarters, watching her father teach their daughter Isabella to type on a specially designed toddler keyboard. The sight would have seemed impossible a year ago. Ricardo Rodriguez and Alexander Sterling working together, their granddaughter bridging decades of bitterness with pure innocence. Alexander emerged from his office, carrying their son James. while their other daughter, Sophia, slept peacefully in a carrier nearby. The billionaire who'd once commanded boardrooms with ruthless efficiency now managed conference calls while changing diapers. His priorities permanently transformed. The new AI ethics protocols are working, Maya reported, reviewing quarterly assessments. Consumer trust is at an all-time high, and our educational foundation has funded scholarships for 2,000 students. Sterling Technologies had evolved into something unprecedented, a tech company that prioritized human welfare over profit margins. The transformation hadn't been easy. Many board members had resigned, traditional investors had fled, but new partners emerged who shared their vision of ethical innovation. Maria would be proud, Ricardo said quietly, his voice thick with emotion as he watched his granddaughters play. Maya nodded, thinking of her mother's sacrifice, how her death had nearly consumed their family with bitterness. But these 3 babies had broken the cycle, creating love where vengeance once lived. Alexander approached Maya, sliding his arms around her waist as they watched their children explore their new world. The man who'd once dismissed her as a personal complication now couldn't imagine life without her constant presence. Any regrets? He asked, echoing his question from their wedding night, but with completely different meaning now. Only one, Maya replied, turning in his arms. I wish I'd told you the truth that first night at the diner. If you had, we might not have ended up here, Alexander pointed out. Sometimes the longest road leads to the best destination. Maya laughed. The same infectious sound that had captivated Alexander during their first conversation. But now it carried deeper meaning, representing triumph over tragedy, love conquering revenge. The afternoon sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a scene that embodied redemption. Former enemies raising children together, building something meaningful from the ashes of their conflicts. Maya wore a white dress today, not coral like that fateful night at Rosie's diner, but pure white representing their clean slate, their commitment to truth over deception. As their children played around them, Maya and Alexander Sterling faced the future together, not as strangers bound by arrangement, but as partners who'd learned that love could indeed conquer vengeance, and that second chances sometimes led to the most beautiful endings. Share this story if you believe in the power of forgiveness and second chances. What would you have done in Maya's position? Let me know in the comments below.